SPS.com. Isn't this a sports show?
1999, Mike Maslowski.
Yep,
who I believe
Linebacker.
came to the aforementioned high school that I played football at.
Yes.
One day, randomly, I don't know.
Went on to star in Monsters, Inc.
Almost entirely.
I broke Josh.
I can't do this radio show anymore.
This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
I simply can't. These are hostile work conditions. I can't be forced to work like this. I can't be forced to work like this. I am just sitting back in my chair staring at the sky hoping that God's hand comes through the ceiling and takes me home.
Take the show with you by listening on the Sports Radio 810 mobile app at 810WHB.com or by searching for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts.
I think the reputation of this show, because of you, Rudy, has
Increased?
No, I think, Rudy, that
Trending up?
the reputation of the show, because of you, has been sullied.
This is Almost Entirely Sports on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
All right, everybody, speed it up. We got a whole lot of show to get to tonight for all the best reasons in the world. Here's what we have for you on this evening's edition of Almost Entirely Sports. It's a Seth Keysor Tuesday. We all know that, and that's obviously always one of the absolute highlights of the week. He's on with us at 9 tonight, per usual. After Seth Keysor, we'll bring you my conversation with Jordy Nelson from this weekend. That's not how our Tuesdays usually end, but how our Tuesdays usually kick off, certainly not the way they do tonight, because we have a very special guest that'll be joining us in the next segment, because Ryan Tracy, the one and only from RGR Football, Rogue Analytics, Locked On Chiefs, you know and love him because I think more than anybody else, I think the overlap of the Chiefs content that I've been putting out over the years, and the Chiefs content that Ryan's been putting out over the years, the number of times that people absolutely lose their minds over the crossover times that we have Ryan on, the number of people that are clearly in both audiences with love for all of us. I think Ryan is probably...
Love for Ryan.
Well, and tolerance for us. Yeah, that's fair. But the overlap...
I don't know about us. People love me in beards.
Hard to imagine why they wouldn't.
We're great.
But we have Ryan not just on the phone with us tonight because he usually is, shoveling snow in the middle of summer to try to get a satellite signal from this mountaintop in Colorado. Mountain man that he is. Usually that's when we get to talk to Ryan.
I will say, 'cause I don't think I've told my dad. I assume my dad knows the name Ryan Tracy, but I don't know if I've really ever talked to my dad about it. Ryan Tracy is living my dad's dream life. My dad just still every now and then, he'll just go I think I'm probably too old to become a mountain man. I'm like, nah, Dad, you can still do it.
Rudy's dad, Ryan Tracy, is making his first in-studio appearance with us on tonight's show. I was only sort of listening to what you said there, Rudy, but I'm pretty sure that you just said that Ryan Tracy is your dad.
Absolutely nailed
I
it.
don't think he's old enough for that to really work, But
I mean, I'm only 15.
you are what?
15. Young kid.
You've got
Hello, fellow children.
You can't. Rudy, I've had to teach Beards about this over the years. It's like, hey, Beards, guess how many Oreos I ate yesterday?
None.
Joke's on you. It was 17.
Dang it.
Wow, that's so. That
I was so close.
Beards has gotten very good at
So,
that game. You got to lie better.
I assume you had a great, funny joke, but I can barely hear anything, so I really don't know anything Beard said.
Beard said that he was also surprised to find out that Ryan Tracy is your dad.
Got it. I was only kind of joking there. I could technically hear Beards, but it sounded like he was in a room on the other side of the building screaming. Where I was like, I can make it out, but it's very quiet, very faint. Ooh.
Did I fix it?
A little better.
I think I fixed.
Yeah.
Oh, mine's gone.
Oh.
I sacrificed. Only one may live sort of situation.
Oh, wow.
Your
clapped
clap
and I
fixed
just
it?
fixed it both
I've
ears.
also got mine fixed.
Here we
It's
go.
a little too loud now.
I love that it is.
How about that? Is that better?
I now have nothing.
That was my fault. I actually did that on purpose.
Okay.
So
I love that a clap can just fix
everything.
Everything.
We need more applause in our lives, generally speaking.
Wait, are our mics the clap-on lights?
Yeah.
Did we just not know this whole time?
Oh, wow. And that changed it again for me, actually.
Oh,
No
did
bleep. It really did. It actually did. Wow, that's bizarre. So we will be joined by Ryan Tracy very, very shortly to talk about what he's seen from his time at Chiefs training camp over these last couple of days. Obviously, there's the preseason, there's the huge storylines all across the board. We always get to almost every single thing whenever we have Ryan on, and getting to talk to him in person is extremely exciting. So in studio, in person, Ryan Tracy will be joining us in just a little bit. And then again, Seth Keysor at 9. And not a joke, legitimately, Jordy Nelson will be after Seth Keysor this evening. Because I had the chance to talk to him out at the big sports memorabilia event that was happening over the weekend. It also means that I'm going to have to promise you shortly we'll get to Tom Bahali and Derek Nadi. It won't be in tonight's show, which is kind of I feel like I'm hustling backwards. I feel like I'm saving the good stuff maybe for Thursday. But Thursday we're going to have a bunch of those interviews, including a bunch of baseball ones as well. So this is going to be one of the most absolutely jam-packed shows in all jam-packed weeks in almost entirely sports history. And I'm really excited about it. There were a couple little things out of training camp today that I thought were pretty interesting, and it's going to be just about, are we going to have time to sneak in an audio clip here or there later on? But we got to hear from a bunch of the assistant coaches today, and also pretty much all of them, not quite all of them, but most of them admitted that they are very ready to be breaking training camp. That will be happening tomorrow. The biggest news out of camp itself today, Frank Clark left with a hamstring issue of some sort. There was a report a little bit earlier tonight that he is going to have an MRI, but the Chiefs don't believe it's going to keep him out into the start of the season. The one thing that I'll just sort of that I will throw out there, not to put out any bad juju, but just to put a note in your mind there, is all of these sort of soft tissue things, the hamstrings and the knee tendonitis and all of that stuff are things that I'm just afraid will show up whenever, just as soon as you've forgotten about them. Mm-hmm. And so keeping an eye on that for Frank Clark is going to be interesting. But that was the main thing from today. And we are now also through the first very limited round of roster cuts as well. The main mover there is that Antonio Callaway was placed on the waived injured list. So if he clears waivers, he'll end up on the Chiefs injured reserve. Otherwise, another team could still claim him. They only had to cut move 5 guys off the active roster today. And so I think that for the most part, it's probably not a huge deal. You can let go of the Antonio Callaway dream. Also worth noting that once you get to the 53-man roster, you can now put someone on IR. They have the shortened period. You can bring back unlimited players from IR again this year, as was the case last year after it's gotten less restrictive. And hopefully it sticks around fully post-COVID. It was expanded for COVID purposes last year. But hopefully that ends up continuing into the future. But
it's a weird rule to go back on because
right.
It's just what does it hurt?
Who is it bad for? That is the question.
Who is it bad for? Yeah.
And the answer is probably the owners for some of the very bottom contracts. They end up paying to your 70th man, maybe if you have a bunch of guys that end up on IR. But that stuff happens anyway. Yeah. And they're putting naming right. It's
owners
Gay
have
Field,
this ability too. I think it's actually GEHA, Josh.
The fact that
Arrowhead.
unbelievable that I have to explain how good Rudy's joke was really quick, is that every single time since the opening press conference where GEHA announced a partnership with Patrick Mahomes, Rudy's been calling them Gayha. And every time I go, Rudy, it's not Gayha, it's GEHA. And he says, I'm pretty sure it's Gayha. That time I called them Gayha for the first time on the radio ever. And Rudy was right there breathing down my mother bleeping neck.
I'm proud of myself.
You should be, you piece
Like
of
I
human.
cut out of my very sportsy
Just say your take.
take. So what I was gonna say is I never feel sorry for owners because owners are continually doing things that make me not feel sorry for them. Like John Mara today, basically saying that he talked. John Mara, right? I do have the Giants owner's name, right? Okay. That he basically talked to that nobody wants to see players trash talking. I just assume the person he talked to was himself in the mirror.
No. Oh, I believe that he talked to people.
Yeah,
it was
I do
Dave
too.
Gettleman and Joe Judge.
Is it Mara or Mara?
Mara.
I think it's Mara.
Geehaw.
I think it's Mara.
Yeah, it's pronounced Gayha beards.
Arrowhead.
Tomato.
Tamara.
Tomato Gayha.
Tomato to Gayha.
I think John Mayer did talk to a lot of rich white guys. I agree with that.
But so that he was talking about why taunting is a point of emphasis.
Yeah.
And his quote was that he is sick and tired of the talking. If that was a criticism of almost entirely sports on Sports Radio 810, I would understand. But it's just players making incredible football plays and then standing up and saying something like, "Hello, sir, you failed to tackle me." And I think that is an indicator that I am a better athlete than you are.
Well, you know what the problem is there? It's that his team's not that good. And because then they're the ones that are getting taunted constantly. And that's why he's trying to stop it, is because he's tired of his team getting taunted at.
His quarterback is Daniel Jones. This is a good point.
I'm just going to plug those two pieces together and just also point out that who in the NFL do you think is least likely to end up with a taunting penalty? Daniel Jones is a top 5 draft pick in that game.
Yeah.
He is a top 5 draft pick in that game.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any. I'm sure there's somebody better.
Rosen?
Well, it's because he's out of the league now. So that's probably. It has to be someone who's actively playing.
I think Josh
league.
Rosen though is like a sneaky trash talker.
I think that's true.
Because like Josh Rosen is like he's one of those guys like whenever like his dad is like a world renowned like surgeon. I think his mom as well, and like he's going to be probably a world renowned like finance guy. So he probably like, has like sneaky trash talking, but it's like you don't understand it because it's like finance lingo or something. Like he's comparing other players to stocks, and everybody's just like, huh?
I think Andy Dalton has more spunk. Drew Lock definitely does.
Yeah.
Josh Allen definitely does. Matt Ryan definitely does. What do I do with all these quarterbacks? Chad Henne definitely does.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Glennon is on this list here. I feel like
He's got a long. He's tall.
he's just tall.
He's a tall. You're not that tall with that long of a neck and not have some energy behind you.
You won't be able to hear Kirk Cousins from behind the plexiglass, but he will talk bleep. We've seen him do that.
You like that?
Yeah, that's his whole thing. That's one of his many things. Along with being pro-virus.
Hey, he said he'll practice outside in the middle of January.
We know Mason Rudolph will say some stuff. Allegedly. Allegedly.
I think I missed this. What did Mason Rudolph allegedly say?
Who?
I don't know what I said there. I don't know how that came out.
I'm not going to answer that question.
Okay.
It was right before Myles Garrett bashed his head in with his own helmet. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So it was a bad word.
Okay.
It was a bad word.
Very, very bad word.
Allegedly.
I don't know why.
Myles Garrett alleged that he said some things, and Mason Rudolph
alleged that Myles Garrett hit him in the head with a helmet.
Listen, you were saying Mason Rudolph, and the face wasn't coming up to me there, and I was like, Mason Rudolph. What am I? And then after you said that, it clicked.
To be fair,
so ignore me.
It's hard to see his face behind both his helmet and Myles Garrett's helmet.
It was his own helmet, though. It was. I hate to be a stickler for the facts. You know this. I'm all about really leaning into the fiction. But it's the facts are too funny, which is that he got hit by his own helmet.
I forgot about that. He did rip off his own helmet and hit him with his own helmet. You know, Duck Hodges is out there just doing duck calls. That's basically trash talk.
Do you think Sam Darnold would talk some bleep? Definitely more than Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Even as a backup.
He's a Cali boy. He's got some. It's a calm trash talk, but it's trash talk.
Wait a second. Is he actually the backup, or he's going to start in
No,
Carolina,
yeah,
isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. I just kind of, to be honest, man, I'm not thinking too hard. I just sort of assumed they drafted somebody or brought in some competition that was going to beat Sam Darnold for that job, and they didn't, did they? Oh,
I feel like there's a good chance, like maybe like after Teddy Bridgewater like lost a leg, that he just stopped talking at that point. Like I think that's maybe possible, but he's certainly more of a trash talker than Daniel Jones.
I can't envision Daniel Jones talking any amount of bleep whatsoever.
Yeah. And you know when he does, because he probably has. It's very awkward, and you're like, what?
The Panthers do have PJ Walker, by the way. So,
oh yeah, that's right. I forgot that they signed
XFL
2 years
legend.
ago the XFL dude.
Legend.
Yeah, legend.
It's pronounced.
True, legend. You are correct.
Pronounced Geha.
Mara.
I can't take any more of this, so let's go ahead and get a much better analyst on the show. Go ahead, Beards. Do you going to boo me? It seemed like you're going to boo.
No, I wasn't going to do anything.
Really? You like that one?
No.
I can't take any more of this? Made it?
He did like it, but...
I didn't like it, but I'm not going to boo it.
Yeehaw! That's great news. Ryan Tracy is next.
Want more Almost Entirely Sports? Watch the show live on the Sports Radio 810 Facebook page. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
For 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes, talked eloquently about the Chiefs winning the AFC Championship for the first time in 50 years, and then for 4 minutes talked about the Space Force.
Which was founded September 1st, 1982.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Training camp time often brings lots of pleasant surprises. You know, you get your undrafted free agents who rise up the depth chart. You get some good performances from guys maybe you weren't expecting. And sometimes Ryan Tracy shows up in town. And that's the surprise we have today. Surprise, everybody. Ryan Tracy's here. Hi, Ryan.
Hi, how are you? I'm like the 90th guy on the roster.
Oh, I disagree. Your roster spot is safe. And it is so good to actually, I think this is the first... you know what? We probably did like a good headset at training camp segment a couple years ago, but this is your first time in studio proper.
Yeah,
and it's very exciting. I'm very glad to have you here.
It's lovely.
Thank you. We've really dressed up the place, knowing that you're going to be here. All these flowers that are all over the place. Just pretend they've always been here. You almost certainly, I have to think, know Ryan's work, if not just from following Ryan, from the amount of times that Seth has talked about working with Ryan, because also it's Seth Keysor Tuesday, and he doesn't even get top billing today because you're in town and he's still in Minnesota. But if you've not gotten any of Ryan's work, you've got the Locked On Chiefs podcast, you've got Rogue Analytics, you've got RGR Football, the YouTube channel that is taking over the world. Your YouTube numbers on a regular basis, I look at and go, eventually, this man is going to either be my boss or put me out of business. I don't know which one, but that's the kind of fear and also love and appreciation that I have for you, Ryan.
I miss you. I'll pay you in hamburgers.
Deal. How many am I at right now? Because I'd like to rack that up.
We'll negotiate.
But I mean, first of all, again, to make sure that people have actually followed the different things that you do, and you want to give a little quick sales pitch, and assuming that maybe there's some new eyes or ears that are meeting you for the first time.
It's fun. It's all kind of all over the place. It's a hodgepodge, but I do the video on RGR because to show people some things, and that's probably the big plus. But Locked On Chiefs has been we just had our 5th year anniversary.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah. We've been daily for 5 years, Chiefs, year round.
Oof.
Yeah. Don't listen to June, folks.
June is just tough.
Yeah, just don't. But yeah, and then Rogue Analytics is something, I'm a physiologist, and so I've done this study of athleticism through the draft for going on 15 years. And it's my personal Legos, and I decided to put it out for the world, and they see what I make now.
It is a remarkable amount and also variety of content that Ryan puts out. So you can follow him on Twitter at Ryan Tracy NFL to generally get all of it, or at least to see most of it as it's happening, and try to point you in the right direction. But you can also subscribe to all those things individually. You obviously are not just here. You did not just descend down the mountains just to see me. I like to think that you may have, but I know that's not true. But you also are here for training camp in St. Joe. It's winding down. We got a preseason game in the rear view. What did you see out at camp in St. Joe that maybe opened your eyes a little bit? You went, oh, you know what? I do think Chris Jones can play football.
It was a revelation, let me tell you. But honestly, just in watching Chris move in particular, the yoga's working. I mean, Kay, I know you like Josh's show. I'm very happy that you're here.
She also tagged you guys.
Yeah.
She mentioned Locked On Chiefs. She did. Kay Adams, a huge fan of this segment, I'm sure.
And she got Chris to nearly go where no Chris should go before. And I thought that was an accomplishment. Good for her. But no, I mean, the yoga's working for him.
Yeah.
I mean, to be a guy that makes that transition, I'm pretty impressed. I know he's happy. So for me, it's coming down to how can you support that move? Give yourself another edge. I know Frank pulled a hamstring today. Yep. We'll see what severity is there. There's some young guys that can pair with him. But I think the thing that stood out to me is not just that Colin Saunders and Tershawn Wharton had good games, but just the snap-to-snap presence of Jaron Reed is it's even more than I thought, and I was pretty pumped when it happened.
So unpack some of that, because that unit all together, I mean, we've never in anywhere in Chiefs history have the trenches been talked about more over the course of an offseason. And I admit to this. I am a simple man. I like quarterbacks, I like receivers, I like cornerbacks. I like watching the ball fly through the air. And I have been excited about both sides of the lines for the Chiefs. So explain to me what you've seen from Jaron Reed that makes you even more excited, how that unit is exciting you at this point.
Because most of the big men that we've seen here, at least in the Reed era, have been guys that are there to support other players.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to clog up the middle. We're going to try to keep the linebackers clean. Now, it's a little bit different because now hay can be made in the A gaps, and that's where ball games are won, not just with the run game. But
I don't know. This is a weird vibe that you can touch me, you can push me on the shoulder while you're making a point. It's even more intimidating. Well, afraid to look
here. I need a smaller chair, I guess. That's fine.
No, there are no smaller chairs.
But no, like just his presence, like snap to snap. It's not that he wins every rep.
Yeah.
It's that he pushes people around even when he loses the rep. So like there is that physicality I think helps everyone else.
Yeah.
And I hope that it rubs off on all the younger guys. I feel like Wharton and Saunders have raised their game. I feel like Taco got back out there in the last couple of days. I was concerned about that because snap to snap, he was probably the best efficient pass rusher they had last season.
Interesting.
When I do the numbers, that's the way it worked out. And I want to see him take the next step forward. That potential's still there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that.
Well, and then the other side, again, we've dug into now, for months and months, but you get now 3 rookies currently working on the starting line alongside 2 highly regarded veterans. It makes for a tremendously interesting story, as we've proven time and time again. But whenever you look at this specific makeup of these guys, I have no doubt in my mind that you're very excited about at least a couple of them.
Yeah, I mean, possibilities. Like, I'm not as excited as Andy Reid, but I might be close.
Yeah,
because it opens up the whole concept of being able to play action. And I know, like you said, you got to see the ball in the air, right?
Well, I enjoy that.
To do that, you can set it up a little bit more,
sure.
And then actually take advantage of the fact that everybody wants to play back on Mahomes, wants to not give him anything up front. If you're going to play soft boxes, take advantage of it.
Right.
And that's what I think, especially the rookies, because they don't have the baggage of the past.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh, I can just go maul this guy, and actually the back will come through and do something.
Right.
That's great, So I think this is a turning point, not just from protecting Mahomes as a bigger goal over the arc of Mahomes' career, but in being able to be more versatile.
And I mean, those guys, there is a ton of power in that group. You've got, it was funny. We'll talk to Seth in a little while, but in his piece about that included the Joe Thuney breakdown from the preseason game, he used the phrase. It was something like Joe Thuney is no mauler or no power player or whatever, which is so funny because in any other context in life, he would be. Joe Thuney would be the strongest guy that you know. But you find between Orlando Brown and Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith and right now, let's say Lucas Niang, like there is a lot of beef on that line. But also in the preseason game, we saw them move pretty confidently. We've seen all of those guys at different points. We've talked a little bit about the zone versus the gap runs and all of that stuff and the GT counter and all the things that we've gotten so deep into over the last couple of months. But when you start looking at some of the nitty gritty like that has to be part of the thing that gets you excited, right?
Yeah. I mean, because no one thing can break down and ruin a game now.
Yeah.
You can't the protection can't just break and then nothing works, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can run the ball successfully here. And for me, I'm actually ready after these last 2 days of practice to say that Niang is there. Like,
really?
He's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Niang.
Because it's not just getting used to it. It's the footwork that I think is improved. It's understanding where it's going to come from, that contact point.
Yeah.
That's what I've been watching the last 2 days. Like, I admit I haven't watched Trey Smith, the darling of the Chiefs offensive unit, but as much because I wanted to see Niang because he's the guy that we forget because he had the year off.
He's the question mark.
He is.
With 2 rookies starting alongside him, Lucas Niang is the question mark.
Right. And the fact that Andy said, hey, we're going to put Mike over at left, that says a lot, or it should.
Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting because of the very first day or 2 of camp, Rimmers was starting at right tackle, and I think it was literally day 1 of the full team stuff. Niang was working at left. And that kind of makes sense. If Orlando Brown goes down, whoever is the third tackle needs to be able to play over there. And obviously, whoever it would be a step down. That's why they made the trade for Orlando Brown. And we saw Mike Rimmers play at left tackle in the Super Bowl, and I don't want to talk about it anymore. But to build that line and to have that kind of confidence in Niang, again, also, now, I mean, if you look long-term at the value of having 3 rookies that you feel completely confident in, being able to start there for the duration of their rookie contracts with a couple veterans on the left side, it just genuinely becomes one of the most interesting units in all of football.
Yeah.
And it's very exciting to me. Do you share that optimism, or are there some things you're waiting to see still?
There's always something I'm waiting to see. There's always an evolution because as good as they project to be, they're going to be better in the future. But for me, it's I know this will shock you. It's going back to the old days when you didn't have free agency, you didn't have lines break up, and so by year 3 and 4, they work together better. I think it's going to be a great improvement. I think Orlando is going to have a bit of a transition still. I think everyone who expects him to step in and be all pro is going to be a little bit disappointed, but they shouldn't be because it is a different process, a different offense, a different skill set.
Yeah.
In terms of moving his feet. My big thing is like everybody like threw up their hands that he got beaten one-on-ones, but for me, it was the recovery of his hips and his feet that made me go, wait a minute.
Yeah.
He's going to be okay. It's going to take a little time, and with Tooney being the anchor, this is a unit that I think can get Mahomes to the midpoint of his career, and you can see a lot of success before that.
I love the thought of also remembering the days where you don't have lines breaking up like that. Here's a name drop that I'll have to pick up in a second. But I got to talk to Will Shields a month or two ago, and that was one of the things looking at this line. I know the names are all over. But, it also reminds me of something I said to Derek Nottie a couple days ago.
We'll well done.
But talking about the continuity of, the best iteration of that line that Will Shields was a part of. He's talking about the communication, everything that by year 2 and 3, you grunt and the guy to your side knows exactly what you're looking at and where that's going to come from. It for me, I mean, I haven't thought about it over these last few days as much, but like that future is so fun and so bright because of like you said, there's always going to be something to work on. You're never stagnant for more than a second, right? You're either moving up or you're moving down. And this is an incredibly young line, even accounting for Brown, who is in his first contract still, right, and Tooney, who just got his first big one. I like it.
I think you're going to like it more.
I do too.
Because as much as I'm going to talk about this for the next 5 years, you're going to be able to talk about Mahomes having his way with teams and not have to worry about what you saw in that Super Bowl.
Outside of the trenches, what's been your favorite thing so far? Because those have been the stories. But where else have you looked and gone like, you know what, that right there, that's catching my eye?
I was big on Snead coming out.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knew that. Like I professed it to everyone's ad nauseum. It's the fight, and everybody else is like, hey, he made it as a rookie. Now he's the best. Sarge Ferris, he's the best corner on this roster.
Yeah.
And now they're all I can see the dog coming out in everybody. And that was, for me, not being in no camp last year for me, and I only get to see a couple practices a year. That was what was noticeable to me is the backups that are fighting to get on the field. That's great.
You had Mike Hughes, returning punts and kicks in the first preseason game and delivering some blows. Like that kind of intensity. DeAndre Baker has been flying all over the place, and that leaves out like Rashad Fenton, who I thought probably had the inside track to be that third guy before the offseason really got fully rolling. Do you have a favorite among those three where you say, you know what, I think I've seen the most from this guy to be that third corner and then that kicks Snead to the inside?
My gut is when the Bullets fly in the regular season, I like where Hughes is at. I've watched a lot of tape of Hughes too, and so I need to see it against full go competition. Because
that tape is not flattering for Mike Hughes.
No, it's not. And kudos for him. A different system can change a guy's perspective. There are other guys on this roster that's the same for.
Sure.
But I like what I see from him. But at the end, I won't count Fenton out. There's a lot of fight in him. And we've seen him do the crazy nickel, too high drops and everything Spags has ever asked of him. And I feel at the end of the day, it may come back to that where there's going to be some back and forth, but I think they can be comfortable.
Moving back to dive in, maybe get a little bit of your insight on what it takes physically and also the mental side and just a whole lot of questions. What do you think is going on with Juan Thornhill and how the Chiefs are using him? And because you can go back to Week 17 last year. He played 100% of the snaps in Week 17 last year. And then you get into the actual playoff run. He's a part-time player. In the preseason, he's playing into the fourth quarter. He works in with the ones and the threes, but he's not getting all the work in training camp. What's your best guess with what you know?
I think the most important word that you just said is all. Because you're right. He's never been the same since his rookie season when he got hurt. I think he can still get back there. I don't doubt that. But for me, it is the volume of work. We didn't see it in OTAs. We didn't see it to start camp. There was questions. There's still questions. I'm not terribly concerned about it. I'm not trying to explain it away. I'm not here to make excuses for Juan Thornhill.
Sure.
But for me, I feel like if you're going to have a snap count for a guy that's coming off of an injury that definitely affected his play, why not make those reps count against competition that isn't practice?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's an emphasis on getting him ready, quality of reps versus quantity.
And so do you think that do you think that it's mostly about physically bringing him back then? Because he's talked about the mental side of things, but he also said he felt like going into the playoffs last year is when the mental stuff clicked back into place. But again, sometimes the confusing thing for me, and again, if you can explain it, awesome. And if you can't, I can live with that because it's confusing to me. But you have these stretches of time where he is playing literally, again, 100% of the snaps. He played a ton of snaps early last season, and then the workload came back down. But then it spiked back up again in a game that didn't actually matter, and then it came back down again in the playoffs. And I don't see a pattern, so I'm left kind of wondering what the plan and the purpose is there.
For me, when I've seen this in players in the past, and I come from developing physiologically players, strength coaching. It's a give and take. It's not a straight curve up. And I think on some players, especially with their anatomy in the knees, sometimes you push too hard and you have to take a couple steps back. And I wonder if this limitation, again, getting as many quality reps rather than quantity of them, says you don't run into that. Yeah. So you can build him up through the season. You don't wear him out. Is my thought. That sounds like Spags being smart to me.
And also it means Dan Sorensen's going to be the number 2 starting safety on this defense.
He is.
Which makes you feel how?
Clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant! It makes you feel clairvoyant! That's very diplomatic of you, because that's going to be the end of your answer there, I think. Jamal Adams signed his contract today, and somebody mentioned Tyrann Mathieu, and then he responded about how he was noting the disrespect. I don't know if that means he doesn't want to be compared to Jamal Adams, or I don't know. The profession of reading in the Tyrann Mathieu's cryptic tweets is one that I retired from earlier this offseason. But whenever you look at what his value is on this defense, but you also see the safety market and where it's at right now, you see Tyrann Mathieu being a little older. He's not cooked or anything, but the talk around this contract is finishing his career as a Chief, which isn't something you say about someone who's 24. Where are you at right now on what you think that contract could be, where that could be headed, the value that the Chiefs should be willing to give to him, and what impact he's going to have on the defense if he is here for another contract?
It says a couple of things to me, that they knew this was coming. The whole league's known that Jamal was going to get his contract. If there was enough space to come to an agreement, it would have gotten done, is my thought.
Interesting.
And so my guess is that it is the longevity thing is my guess. I've been wrong. I've been expecting it to happen before week 1 of the regular season.
Yeah.
Clearly, it doesn't look like that's going to happen now, although deals make motivation, so we'll see what happens. But it does feel like maybe there's still a bigger gulf, and the gulf is only going to be accentuated by the Adams contract. So maybe that makes it a little bit harder to reach an agreement in quick time.
I think this is probably the first time I've asked this question to anybody, but with that being the context, what does this defense look like without Tyrann Mathieu?
Suspect.
Yeah. How does that pan out in your eyes, assuming that there's a replacement level player there? Let's say that it's Juan Thornhill and Dan Sorensen that are starting at safety next year.
I think you're not going to have the big splash plays. I think the defense is competent. It's suspect in the ability to do those things that get the ball back to the offense. And that's not to belittle anybody up front in the front 7. I think that's going to come along. But if Tyrann had to miss the first quarter of the season, there's going to be some bumps because the youth in the back needs some guidance.
Yeah.
And it needs to be not just, hey, this is your assignment, this is where you need to be. It's about the things that Tyrann does that make him Tyrann.
Yeah.
In terms of understanding what's coming, being able to interpret what the offense is setting up for so that he can make his plays. And I think he's the X factor. I think he's the force multiplier, all these military terms that fit him because he raises the level, not just of the DBs, but I think he helps the linebackers. There's this new thing that some folks think that the safeties ought to be wearing the green dot, right?
Yeah.
He is one of the candidates. If you're going to have somebody smart that can diagnose the entire defense, Tyrann Mathieu's one of them.
You mentioned the green dot and invoke the linebackers. That was the next thing I wanted to ask about, where I don't know how much you've gotten to see of this version of Willie Gay. He obviously didn't play in the preseason game. The rookie campaign for Nick Bolton. But again, with working with what you've got, with what you've seen at camp, with what you saw in the preseason game, with what you know about these guys, with that unit coming together, it seems like I was out there a couple days. I was out there on Monday, which was yesterday. Boy, it's been a weird week. Thank you for the applause. I remember what day it is. It's Tuesday. But they were doing the long drive drills, which was all in sub packages, and the linebackers were Anthony Hitchens and Willie Gay, and that was the two of them for the entire drive. And so it's starting to feel to me like there's a little more of that year 2 trust being given to Willie Gay Jr. that maybe moves Ben Niemann back to sort of that backup role that seems like everyone would probably agree is a better place for him to be. He's got a role on a team, probably shouldn't be one of your starters. And then you have Bolton coming in his rookie year. How are you seeing that all kind of pan out right now? What do you expect to see week 1? Do you think it's going to look different week 18?
For me, the only question is how much you have to do. Like, the Cleveland Browns want to run the ball. You got to be in base a lot more than we normally see them. So that changes that scenario. But this is where I expected Willie to be in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And for those who do like to pay attention to athleticism, Willie was the top of his draft class for a reason, and you see it now. It was putting the mental part of recognition so that he could unleash the athleticism, and now it's there. And I really do feel if he hadn't gotten hurt, if he had had that playoff run, he would be even better now. He would look more then than he does now. And I'm really excited for him. I think that pairing is important, though, because he needs the guidance of the older guy, the guy that knows where everything ought to be. And I think it's really going to be fun to watch two guys that I think the Chiefs probably feel if Hitch had to miss games, you could probably put him in there, call the defense, and they want Bolton to be able to do that.
Right.
And so it's not as much as a Mike and a Will thing with the backups.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, you're right. It's more of a can you call the defense if Willie Gay was going to miss time, maybe Nick Bolton actually ends up working in. But if it's Hitchens that's missing time, it probably needs to be Ben Neiman to be able to wear the dot.
Yeah,
that's interesting. I hadn't really thought about that.
At least for now, anyway.
Yeah, for the interim. What do you think about the skill sets of how that's going to pan out? Do you think Bolton is likely to see more work in his rookie season than Willie Gay did?
It all depends. I mean, let's hope, knock on wood, that Hitchens is healthier than he's been the last couple of seasons.
Sure.
He generally will miss a couple of games. And I think if it's timed right, hopefully one before the bye, let's not go over that too much. It will give Bolton an opportunity because Willie's still got plenty of room to grow too. So if he's more stable in what he's doing, I think that allows Bolton to come in earlier.
Another thing where you might see some implications and some missed time is that we've talked to Seth a lot about the fact that he eventually is going to have to eat a ghost pepper. And he consistently mentions you as one of the people who he, is getting a good advice from as opposed to me getting bad advice from because you care about Seth.
Wait, it's your fault, right?
It was his fault. No, it was Seth's fault.
Okay.
Seth said, because I had the whole taser thing, right? And I still have to pay that off.
Right.
Because I'm a dumb person. But Seth had, he said, you know what, if the Packers had just drafted Jordan Love, and that's gone very smoothly. And so he said, you know what, if Aaron Rodgers, it was either calls or texts Jordan Love within the first 24 hours of this draft pick, I'll eat a ghost pepper. And then, like, the next day, Jordan Love was like, yeah, one of the first people who reached out to me was Aaron. And that is, he just said it, and it was a dumb thing for him to say. No one else had anything else on the other side of the bet. That's how the taser thing went also. So that's sort of just how, Times Ours has produced
karma.
Its issues. Yeah. But are you willing to kind of go to bat here to say, listen, I'm afraid Seth is going to die if he eats this ghost pepper? Explain your side of the story here as Seth continues to say, well, Ryan's really worried about it.
I am really worried about him. He didn't do so well with the jalapeno, and let's be honest.
Wasn't it a habanero? Can we give him?
Was it?
I think it was a habanero. I'm gonna give him credit for the habanero, even if it wasn't.
Okay.
Because I feel like he would want that, but he didn't do great.
I love heat.
Ooh.
I make green chili that will peel paint.
Yeah.
I'm not touching one of those raw. No, not going near it.
It's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea. And I like him, and I care about his family, and I want them to have their father be able to speak. So maybe that's not necessarily the point.
You just made me care about Seth's well-being because I need him to speak.
You do.
He's got to come on the show and speak.
I do too.
Yeah, we need him to come do content with us. Well, now all of a sudden I am worried about Seth's content more than anything else. So do you have would you come up with an offering of like, hey Seth, maybe you do this instead? They could try to get us somewhere in the middle, or is he? Because he's also very stubborn. So I feel like he wants to follow through on the stupid thing that he said, but I also think he doesn't want to eat a ghost pepper.
He wrote his check. He wants to cash it. I get that, but if you put it in there, I think he'll back off if he needs to. I mean, give him a viable alternative. Don't do Scotch bonnet. Let's bring it down. I forgot it was a habanero, so there's probably a little bit of room. Is a scorpion pepper in there? Yeah, maybe.
He could do one of the have you done the spicy chip thing? I can't remember.
Not on purpose.
The Packies whatever challenge or something. We could probably do that. I want to see him suffer a fun amount,
Right.
And I don't want him to go to the hospital. But also he's going to tase me. And so that probably makes me the wrong teammate there. on his behalf because I'm gonna have to go.
I don't know. Is a piercing out of the question?
Could we have him get a piercing?
You got to run this by Jazz, but I'm just saying, a nice eyebrow piercing could be fun.
I would kill a man to see Seth come out with just like a bar piercing, you know? Oh my goodness. Someone can Photoshop that. Someone listening right now can Photoshop that, hopefully before the show is over tonight. I would like to see that very, very much. Ryan, we got to get out of here. You got to get out of here. Give me a quick rundown again of where people can find your stuff. Also, I mean, your YouTube schedule. When do you have Seth on so people can come cheat on this show by watching you and Seth together? Because I think, we're opposite, but it's all on demand also. It's okay. We can all share.
We are always available. Seth's with me on Thursday nights. We do a live stream. We try not to get into the old hijinks of just talking film the entire time.
Right.
So we try to help the folks as well. But I live stream on Monday nights as well. You can catch the live stream after Chiefs post game. So
nice.
That's for me. And then we have other stuff, film review, stats, everything during the week. That's all on RGR Football. And then Locked On Chiefs is 20 to 25 minutes of Chiefs content 5 days a week, all year long, whether you like it or not. And you can find that all on Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter.
You can get it all year long if you like it, or July. Either way,
right.
It's all year long. Again, at Ryan Tracy NFL on Twitter. Ryan, I am so glad you came here to see me and to do this show, and then to stop by in St. Joe for whatever reason as well. Thank you for being here. Thank you for making your in-studio debut, and let's see if we can get Seth Keysor to get an eyebrow piercing.
Yes, thank you for having me, Seth. Do it.
Come on, Seth. It'd be so cool.
At JB Brisco, at Beards McFly, at Not That Rudy, at Sports Radio 810. Just do it already. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
No, I'm not Travis Kelce. God, I wish I was, though.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thanks again to Ryan Tracy for stopping out of his way a little bit while he was here in town to come hang out in studio. If you missed any of that, obviously everything that we do all the time here on Almost Entirely Sports is podcasted. You can get that wherever you get your podcasts, or go to aes.show and you can get all the links there. But if you listen to podcasts on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Stitcher or any random third-party app, which is what both, I think at least Rudy and I both do. Beards, what do you listen to podcasts on? What's your podcast app of choice?
It depends.
You gonna clear your throat?
I've got.
Oh, you good? Power through?
No, I'm good.
Got a little flimmy. I was
If I'm
worried
doing
about
it in
you.
my car, I'm usually doing it on my iPod because it connects to my car radio, so that's Apple or whatever. My phone, though, that's whenever I'm doing it like home or whatever, because I've got my Bluetooth headphones. I'll usually just use my phone. That is, what is this, Player FM?
That's what I use.
Yeah.
So
Hold on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Real quick, Rudy. Just one second, Rudy. I'm sorry to brush back. You use 2 different podcast apps.
Mm-hmm.
That's bonkers. How do you keep track of what you've listened to and what you haven't?
Because I know.
Do you go back and archive them in other?
Usually I'm using my iPod, so that's what is like 90% of the time. And then just like
Okay.
if I'm at home, then I'm like, I want to listen to something. Then I'll pull out my phone and be like, okay, I've listened to that already. Maybe listen to that. Okay, I'll listen to that one.
Okay. My podcast app is so meticulously detailed that gives me anxiety on your behalf. What were you going to say, Rudy?
I kind of do. I don't know if you also use Pocket Cast, Josh. Still, I
Player
know,
FM. I'm a Player FM boy. No,
Okay.
sorry. Nope.
Because then you
I
switched.
used to use Player
Yeah,
FM.
I was
I'm
gonna
now
say.
using Pocket Cast.
Yeah, because I remember basically telling you about Pocket Cast. That's why I was. a little
Yes,
confused.
that's right. You're right.
Pocket Cast is very, very similar to Player FM. I just
Very.
think it's a better version of it.
Yeah.
It's just a more modern, more updated, I would say, version
Yeah,
of
that's
Player FM. But the layout is very similar. Chaotic Horse is Spotify. I hate Spotify.
I wish
podcasts
that they would get it
so
figured
much.
out. I would be happy to listen to podcasts on Spotify, but
Yeah, it's terrible.
we have time for exactly one audio clip from training camp today. This is Joe Blameyer. He's now the wide receivers coach for the Chiefs this year. It's his first year as a position coach. He's been a offensive consultant and some other stuff in his time with the Chiefs so far. And I thought this minute was the best minute of press conferences we got today. He was asked about how Andy Reid often credits him as being the innovator on the offense with some real creativity. He's very humble in that answer, and then answers another question that I think is worth your time.
He's deflecting. He's the creative guru. He's giving credit where credit isn't due. But we do look and we do try to find plays from anywhere in the country. And when we find something that is being successful, if it's not something we currently have in, then either we try to copy it straight up and put it in, or we see how it can fit. And if something's working, we're all about putting guys in the best position to succeed. If there's a concept or a way to do that we don't currently have in, coach is not afraid to add it. And so that's the great thing about him, our offensive staff, our offense, and the guys we have. They're eager to get more and more and more and have more on their plate in order to showcase their abilities.
I'm going to have an example of that maybe doesn't give anything away. That's something you've already run that maybe you saw watching tape from one of the instances you're talking about?
Not a specific example, but with the I'll just say with the defenses in this league, anything that's on film for 2-3 weeks that's successful, they'll have an answer for. So we're looking out constantly, weekly, for what just got ran yesterday, what just got ran in college the week before, what's something that maybe the defense hasn't seen yet, or maybe the defense we're facing that week has. We saw it, let's get it going before the league has an answer for it.
It would be hard for me to find a minute-long piece of audio anywhere else in Chiefs press conferences to better describe why Andy Reid's offense works, has always worked, and will always work. Seth Keysor's next.
You are listening to Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Kansas City's favorite sports station, 20 years and counting. Sports Radio 810 WHB, Kansas City.
Now it is time for very serious football talk with a man who hates money almost as much as he hates the idea of a healthy sleep schedule.
You will find Seth Keysor everywhere except for in his or your bed, because not only does he not sleep, he's also a faithful husband. So that's important.
The man who has so many children, his wife figured he wouldn't even notice if she bought a few chickens and ducks for the backyard.
We should have an episode where we just have my children appear on the show in ascending order. So we'll do like a minute of Lucas, then 2 minutes of Isabel, then 3 minutes of... Man, I have a lot of kids.
The man who does all of this while being a lawyer in a state that has snow all 12 months of the year.
Until it freezes, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I actually felt very at home driving through southern Iowa. It was snow everywhere, and people were slowing down to like 40. It was adorable. I was driving slowly, but I literally was hanging my head out the window screaming, and that was disconcerting.
It's Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, The Athletic, and the Times Hours podcast on Almost Entirely Sports.
It's officially a training camp Tuesday with Seth Keysor of the Chief in the North newsletter, The Athletic, the Times Hours podcast. And Seth, we're just under the wire because today was the second to last day of Chiefs camp. They break camp tomorrow. Everybody is ready for it to be over. But you made it down for a little bit last week, and I actually got to see you in person. It was, I'll admit it, it was kind of nice.
I appreciate you admitting that. It was very nice. It wasn't as shocking as some people were hoping, or as ghost peppery.
Yeah.
But no, it was nice, and we got a chance to eat at Q39, and it was delicious. And we just had fun. We got to catch up. You got to meet Isabel and Cole in person. And it was an awesome time. We got to watch camp. I got to feel really important when all you really important media types came and talked to me as I stood on the hill. It was just a good old time.
First of all, you blessed us with your presence. I mean, we all understand how this works. You've got all the freaking Twitter followers, and I'm just, trying to touch the hem of your cloak at this point. But that was an early biblical reference. You came down. We had the food. For me, I think even after watching Trey Smith in one-on-ones, watching Chris Jones in one-on-ones, once again, as usual, I do think that the most impressive performance I saw from the week was you at Q39, though.
I have no doubt. If anyone is thinking about going to Q39, which, by the way, we went to Q39, I think we got there at 2:15 on a Sunday, and it was still like a half-hour wait.
Yeah.
Just packed to the gills, that place, constantly. And it never stopped being packed the whole time we were there. For one, if you're a waiter or waitress with any sort of talent, you should apply for a job there because you could make a killing. Crud, I made good money at a Pizza Hut, but that's a whole other ball of wax. Two, if you're going to go to Q39, I highly recommend getting the Q burger with some fries and the judge's plate, which is 3 different kinds of meat, and they're all incredible. And I know what you're thinking, because that comes with 2 sides as well.
Yeah, there was some potato salad, something else there as well.
Yeah, no, the potato salad was excellent. The fries were good. I wouldn't say, I'm not knocking the fries. They're just not, above fries you could get anywhere else. They're good fries, right?
Very fair.
French fries are ruined by the fact that the best ones in the world are served at a food place that everyone openly acknowledges is trash food. It's astonishing. I'm 36 years old. I've eaten at wonderful, wonderful restaurants, and I still can't find fries better than what McDonald's serves. It's unbelievable what they've done.
Yeah, it's some magic,
but
some sorcery,
again,
something.
Whole other ball of wax.
Yeah.
You order those 2 things, and I know what you're thinking, Seth. That sounds like 2 full meals. Yes. And you're going to want about 2.5 hours to space it out, but it can be done.
There was also dessert. I don't remember what you got, or if you got something, or if you made it, it's like, hey, Isabel, do you want dessert? And then maybe Dad will have a donut ball.
I let Isabel order it, and they turned out they weren't for her, and I didn't even eat them. I was so full. I was warm. Like, I was getting the meat sweats. It wasn't great. Worth it, though.
The one thing you mentioned at the front end is I'm gonna just continue to put this statement out there because this is a question that people have asked us, and it's a fair question they have asked us, which is, when am I gonna get tased? When are you gonna eat a ghost pepper? And here's my official statement, and then if you'd like to issue a statement of your own, a follow-up statement, whatever, it's fine. But just to get my cards on the table, whenever Seth is in town and whenever he provides a taser, I will let him tase me with it. That is the black and white, the clear-cut, truest statement I can give, is I'm not going to have anyone else do it because it feels like it needs to be Seth, and I'm not going to pay for my own taser to be tased with. That's my stance.
I think that's fair. And I just didn't feel like driving to my sister's house, which is about 40 minutes out of the way, and then 40 minutes back onto your way. Mm-hmm. Since we were already driving all the way to Kansas City. But I will be seeing her between now and the home opener. And so unless I forget, I will be bringing that down with me after I take a cursory glance as to weapons that are allowed in Iowa and Kansas, or in Iowa and Missouri, because the last thing I need is to get pulled over and get Frank Clark. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's poking out of that bag? It's just a taser. I'm like going to Kansas City to tase a buddy of mine. Oh, really? Step out of the car, sorry. And, that's not what I need.
Do you remember that story from, this might have been 10 or 15 years ago? I have to think. I'm going to Google it here in a second. But I remember being very young when this was a major story. But there was, the woman who drove across the country in the diaper or something to go, get revenge on an ex-lover or something. That story sounds only slightly weirder than I'm driving from Minnesota to Kansas City to tase a friend.
There's not as much of a difference as I would like between those two stories. I would like to be more degrees removed from that story in terms of my daily activities.
Just wear a diaper.
Yeah, I could. I hate bathroom breaks, so it only makes sense. So my statement is that we've been trying to figure out how to do it in a way where I could do it from the comfort of my home. I've also been trying to procure permission from my good friend and fellow content provider on RGR Football, Ryan Tracy. Josh, I believe you're familiar with Ryan.
Familiar with his work, yeah.
I've gotten permission. I wore him down a little bit because Ryan's a good friend and he's worried about me. He's like, he doesn't want me to do this. And I said, I would do it. And he's like, yeah, but how about you just don't? What's going to happen? And that's a great question, a very adult question.
It's such a good question, and it's an option that I think most of the time whenever someone's like, yeah, if this thing happens, I'll get a tattoo of your face on my butt, and it's like, well, just don't do that. But at this point, it's been so drawn out. We've let this all ride on for so long.
Yeah, so it has to happen, and I accept that. It's okay. Words have consequences. And the habanero, it hurt, but it wasn't bad. I was okay. I just need a pint of ice cream, and I am going to there's stuff you can take for your stomach to help. I am going to take that stuff. I don't mind telling people that, and people be like, oh, you're a wimp. Yes, with spice, I am a wimp. I don't care. So I've committed Ryan to let me.
I think that if I pee my pants while being tased, you should have to barf.
Well, hey, I'll tell you what, if I don't, I'll just make myself throw up.
Well, that's somehow worse.
Yeah, I know. That sound. I don't know if you're one of those people that sound really gets to.
Yeah, I would not like
my youngest son, Lucas, when he was about between 8 and 12 months old, maybe a little younger, because we were still carrying him everywhere pretty much, he discovered that he could gag himself. Oh. And so he'd just sit there and he'd look at you and he'd have his hand in your face and he'd smile at you and he'd poke his finger down his throat and whoa! And he never made himself, well, he did make himself throw up once, and he was very surprised. And that was a thing that he did for a month.
I'm just hanging my head.
Oh, he's so cute. And he'd smile at them because it got a reaction, right? So he thought he was doing something cool. It was so disgusting.
What is wrong with kids?
Yeah, kids are disgusting, man. Like, this is just the truth.
Wild.
But anyway, so we are going to tentatively, and Josh is in charge of exactly how this gets done, but I think tentatively we'll probably just do it one of these live stream nights, similar to what I did with the habanero.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we'll figure it out. I'll try to, I'll cross that bridge at some point. We'll get there.
What's fun for me is how genuinely depressing you find all this.
Yeah.
It lets me know you do care about my well-being.
Oh,
and
no.
It's important for me to know that.
No. I was just thinking about how much work it's going to be for me to figure out how to do that.
Oh, no. We'll make Ryan set up the whole thing. You just got to show up. We'll figure. All right, we'll talk off air. I like that better.
I'm just thinking,
because I
it's all
heard
bad.
the Chiefs had a game.
Yeah, they did. We could talk about that. I just wanted to at least provide that one bit of context for the people who listen to this show for us to be in both mental and physical anguish. But I did not feel any anguish even in the second half of the preseason game, which was a nice change of pace because we got actual football back. Training camp is almost over, and there were a handful of interesting things. I want to save your two pieces that are already up on the Chief of the North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. It's $12 for an entire year, and it's every year for $12 forever if you never cancel it. And even if you do at this point, I don't know what Seth is ever going to do. The price should go up by now. He's been doing this for over a year. But bit.ly/SethHatesMoney, $12 for a year of the Chief of the North newsletter. It's ridiculous. Anyway, you got two pieces up there already about the Chiefs' offensive line. I'm going to come back to that, and that'll probably be the bulk of what we talk about. But I'm interested if there's anything else that leaped out to you that you have not done the deep dive on to get to some of the on-the-surface things before we dig into the offensive line play. And even then, we're digging into a relatively small sample size.
Absolutely, and that's all the caveats, right, with preseason action is the sample size tiny. You don't know who they're playing and who they're not playing. I mean, you can, but it takes a crap ton of research. And there's just a lot going on here. What you can do is you can look for traits. You can look to see what things translated for rookies, things like that. So I would say one thing in terms of looking for traits is that there was kind of a minor storyline that went around that Anthony Hitchens has slimmed down. And he looked it.
Yeah.
He looked a touch faster out there. No one's going to, confuse him for Willie Gay Jr. But he looked a shade quicker out there, and that's interesting. Potentially a low-key, very important development for the defense because Hitchens has everything you want in a linebacker except ideal speed and quickness, which is important, mind you. That sounded like a backhanded compliment, but it's really a testament to how good he is at the other things that he's made a long career with having average speed. And so him getting himself a little bit quicker to the ball, that's a big deal. Jaron Reed, I'm going to be writing about him later this week along with Treshawn Wharton and Colin Saunders. The Chiefs interior guys not named Chris Jones were causing some problems rushing the passer. That's a potentially really big deal. And just something to keep an eye on. The secondary looked like it played pretty well. I haven't dove too much into that. I'm thinking they might be a storyline I look at after the second preseason game because they're going to have more snaps there. And so they looked like they held up pretty well outside of one really rough play that we all know what I'm talking about because it was an 80-yard touchdown. So those are a couple of things. If I were to say one thing in the article I'm going to write, besides a bunch of stuff about Wharton, who I'm really excited about, showed some improved hand usage. It looks exciting. Jaron Reed on a third down, on a third and long, Chris Jones drew a double team, and that left Reed one-on-one in space, and he was able to put some pressure on the quarterback to force a check down. That it's a minor snap in a game that's meaningless, but it was good to see someone not named Chris Jones do something rushing the passer. Because last year, outside of blitzing, that sort of stuff, we didn't see a whole lot of it. And so if Jones got shut down, which is going to happen occasionally, whether it's because of a lot of double teams or just the fact that even the very, very best pass rushers in the league win maybe 20% of the time, 25% of the time at best. And every time they win doesn't result in the pressure, right? Like you need other guys. You need as many as possible. It was really encouraging to see someone not named Chris Jones providing some pressure and taking advantage of that one-on-one matchup. So those are a few, 50,000 feet in the air things.
Yeah.
All with the caveat that it's just preseason, bro.
I don't like that you said bro like that. That made me uncomfortable.
I've been watching Letterkenny YouTube clip. Which is I want to be able to share them because they're hilarious, but man, can't really share those with a lot of people. The language is unbelievable, but man, is it funny. So
did you say you're just watching clips of it? You're not actually watching the full show?
No, I'm not. Is it available?
I have no idea. I think illustrious and I guess maybe former Times R's producer Danielle had laid all this out. And I don't know where it's streaming. I can't remember. But the idea that you're watching a show through YouTube clips is genuinely upsetting to me.
For me,
I think it's on Hulu.
Oh man, they have it on Hulu.
I think it's on Hulu.
Well, we finally got Hulu back to watch the last season of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh yeah.
So maybe I'll take a look there.
It is on Hulu.
But I will say that based on a few clips that I've seen, and I'm about to say the most on-brand thing for me ever, and it's going to result in a bunch of people rolling their eyes, but I don't care.
My eyes are already rolled.
There are a number of rather scantily clad women in a couple of the clips, and that makes me wonder whether it's a show I could actually make it through. Am I lame? Sure, but that's who I am. I heard a song once that said, "Be careful, little eyes, what you see," and that's all I do now. So thank goodness that I didn't listen to a song like, Cut My Life into Pieces.
Right.
Well, I could hurt people.
That song doesn't exist. That's definitely not a real song, the second one you said. All right. Well,
I suppose you probably weren't even alive when Papa Roach was big.
My last resort is to move on and talk about the Chiefs' offensive line. I know what I'm talking about. There are a whole lot of movies I haven't seen, but I'm generally pretty well musically at least aware. I don't have a whole lot of Papa Roach VHS tapes cluttering my life, but I know an iconic chorus when I hear it.
Yes, a good iconic chorus when you hear it. One thing, just on a complete side note, and we haven't done a great job talking football this time, other than my 5-minute soliloquy. My son Tucker is learning how to play guitar. And one of the things, of course, that he's learning how to play is the intro to Enter Sandman.
Right, yes.
And so I walked into the room, and it's funny because my dad has played guitar most of his life, and he does a ton of it, and that's what he does for fun. And I walk in the room, and Tucker's playing, and I was like, hey, that's not bad. You're getting pretty good there. That's a jam. And he's like, oh, yeah, it's called Enter Sandman. And I was like, uh-huh. Tuck, did you think I didn't know what that was? He's like, yeah, I was going to tell Grandpa about it next time I see him. I'm like, son, it was a wonderful moment of man, my kid thinks I'm completely lame.
But you just, if I had the ability to roll back the tape this way, a minute ago, you're like, am I lame? Yeah, of course I am. You're like, my kid thinks I'm lame. It's
the song said, be careful, little eyes, not little ears. Well, maybe it did. I just didn't listen to enough of it, so I only heard the first part.
I just think that you are really, really, really close to being fully self-aware, but for whatever reason, being called out by your kids is the thing that still cuts through.
Why do you hurt me when I show you nothing but love? I don't understand. You must be mad at me. That's the only explanation why you would say these things to me, because they're definitely not true.
Well, I just feel like I feel like I'm trying to help. I feel like I'm trying to help just connect some dots that you're so close to, It's like it's like
you're right there, man. You're right there. It's like when people are like, man, when I watched the game, it looked like Patrick Mahomes played well, but his stats weren't that good.
Right.
So, and then you're sitting there, come on, make the connection, make the connection.
We're all rooting for you.
Yeah, come on, we're all here. And then it always ends so, I guess, it just, I guess I just didn't do this is why the pros can watch tape. Yeah, I must get it wrong. You're like, no, you were so close.
This segment so far has been suffocating. No breathing.
It doesn't give a bleep if you cut your arm bleeding.
It doesn't give a heck if you cut your arm bleeding, this segment. Not a single heck. This has been...
Oh, Papa Roach. Goodness.
I wonder how they got to that name, by the way, also. That's a... Roach
I have a theory about band names, and it's that the harder you try with your name, the more likely it is you sort of aren't that good.
Interesting, okay.
It's just that, because I think some bands, they just like, hey, what about this? And they just went with it. Or they're just genuinely goofy. Like Flock of Seagulls.
Yeah.
They, that's just who they are. You know what I mean? Like, that wasn't like an effort thing. Whereas if you name your band Dying Fetus, it's like, well, you're trying too hard. Man, this segment is all over the place.
It's like, Hoobastank trying too hard, not for Seth Keysor. David Crowder Band, almost no effort put into that name at all, right up your alley.
There you go. Then you just ended up with Crowder. And it's like, well, crap, it doesn't get simpler than that, does it now?
It just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah. No, absolutely. These are the things that I can understand, for sure.
I could have gone Dave Matthews Band, but David Crowder Band was significantly more on brand for this.
Way more so, and I probably know a lot more of their songs.
Less accessible to most people listening, more relevant to you, the only person that I'm talking directly to at the moment. So that's
which sums up like a third of our banter about our upbringing and education.
Yep.
That really does sum up some of our segments well. Like, every now and then I'll get like a DM from someone that's just like, hey, I grew up in the Nazarene church and that segment had me rolling. And I'm like, yeah, me and Josh really enjoyed it.
Yep.
And everyone else was like, what? Why is it funny to talk about dancing with one foot still on the floor? It just is funny. It's hilarious, but most people won't get it.
If you, that one person, will just buy all of the things that all of our sponsors are selling and will tell 15 similarly grown-up friends about all of the show and the segment and everything, and you download the podcast from like 50 different IP addresses, we might make it. Maybe.
Yeah. We might have a shot.
To the four Southern Baptists still listening, you want to give them some Orlando Brown content?
Absolutely, I do. Orlando Brown, the whole offensive line. So we're gonna start with Brown.
Well, so again, I'll mention this: the reviews are up here on the Chief of the North newsletter, and the gifts that are here are incredibly helpful for actually seeing what we're going to be talking about. The first one with Orlando Brown and Trey Smith, that's free and unlocked for everybody. If you need proof of concept that Seth's work is worth your time, and again, if you made it to this part in the segment, you probably already have made that call. But if you haven't, that one's unlocked. Second one is for subscribers only. And let's start with Orlando Brown. I mean, I'm comfortable working left to right here if you want, just for the sake of simplicity. You've made the note here. Again, very, very limited sample size, and also the Niners were not running out, I don't think, any of their first team pass rushers, certainly not. I mean, I'm glad you embedded the tweet because I did not have it open still. But it was
they sat Armstead,
Bosa, D. Ford, who's
DJ
still
Jones.
there. Yeah.
Kinlaw wasn't out there. I mean, it was a smart move by them, if I'm being honest, because that game already, like, so I got to listen to the 49ers announcers.
Yeah.
This game mattered to them. Like, the Chiefs are the boogeyman that took their Super Bowl from them.
Interesting. Well, shout out to
and
Shane
it was
Bushell,
just interesting. Their descriptions of Mahomes and some of it was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So Orlando Brown was interesting to look at. And again, this is with all the caveats. Brown pitched a shutout. So what I do, like I always do, I chart pass blocking and run blocking wins and losses, neutral plays, pressures, hits, sacks, given up. And losses, as we talk about often, are much more important than wins because a win by an offensive lineman does not ensure success, but a loss can torpedo an entire play, especially when you're the left tackle, especially in pass protection, etc. So he pitched a shutout, and as he should, right? Mm-hmm. This is what I was looking for from this game because they're playing against the second string, essentially. The Chiefs' offensive line should look great if they're going to be an average offensive line, at least, right? Even if that's, say, the floor. They should look great against backups, and they did. There's your spoiler. Top to bottom, they look great. Orlando Brown pitched a shutout, which is interesting because we've wondered how he would look in pass pro. Turns out the 11-on-11s, again, we'll see how it looks next week. The 11-on-11s that we saw in practice where he's able to direct guys wide and around the pocket, that's how it played out on the field. He just did a nice job overall in pass protection. He had a couple of really nice run block wins. One of their conversions on 3rd and 2 was in part because he just mauled some people. And it's nice to see. It was really good. He played very well. I'm excited. It was a good first step. You see him he's going to need to keep working on these vertical sets, and you can see that. But the talent is there. And it was kind of a relief, to see that coming together. Like, okay, at the very least, I don't think he's going to suck in the Chiefs system. And that's reassuring. So it was nice to see. It really was a lot of what he showed when he was in Baltimore, and I was really encouraged by that.
If I'm going to play a little bit of a downer or maybe a little devil's advocate or whatever, there are two things sort of jumped out to me from your story. One is I like the description of the chase versus the slide. And again, a lot of these all worked out. I mean, all of them worked out fine because you're running the guy around behind the quarterback. And so you can allow either Mahomes or in this case, Chad Henne, to step up into a clean pocket. You also made the note that sometimes that's going to give Mahomes a breakout lane to his left, which is going to be really interesting. I don't know if that's a part of the plan, but it's really interesting. But there's the chase versus slide thing that I think would be worth diving in a little more on if you want. But also, I mean, you use the phrase work in progress, and that doesn't feel like the guy you trade a first-round pick for and are probably going to give a giant contract to in a year. But, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty confident that work is going to go well. But I do think that phrase might alarm some people.
Sure. So by work in progress, what I mean is adjusting to a different offense, adjusting to what exactly can you get away with in terms of chasing versus sliding. And when you saw that happen on at least one snap, it's because he took an aggressive horizontal pass block set, trying to get hands on the defender, and the defender was able to dip underneath it a little, right? Here's the really encouraging thing about that. He has good enough hips. His knees are not particularly bendy. He's not fluid in that way, but he's got good enough hips and athleticism to turn, chase, and still push the guy wide, even if that initial horizontal set doesn't work out. Right. That's super encouraging. And so as a work in progress, what I mean is figuring out what he can and can't get away with, pass blocking for Mahomes instead of Lamar Jackson and instead of the Ravens system. And that was always going to be a work in progress if they grabbed him as opposed to Trent Williams, where the assumption is he's going to be elite immediately. I do think it'll be a work in progress to be really, really good. And that's obviously the plan, right? You trade for a guy because you think he can be really, really good. You give up that kind of draft capital, et cetera. But I do think what he showed, and again, small sample size, et cetera, is that he already looks like he can be a non-weak spot on the line. And I think almost as much as the ceiling, and I think that's part of why they traded for him, I think one of the reasons you trade for Orlando Brown as opposed to drafting, Sam Cosmi or something like that, right? I think the reason you do that is because you want the non-suck floor.
Right. That's fair.
And that's just as important in a lot of ways when you have Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. And so I totally understand why that might concern people. It's a work in progress. But I think it's a reality in the sense that he is going to be learning, at least over the next few weeks, how exactly Mahomes wants to be blocked for and that kind of thing. The really interesting thing is being told that he was spending a lot of time on the sidelines throughout the game talking to Mahomes. And that's really encouraging. And hearing his approach to the game and how cerebral he is about it, I think is only a good thing. So that's what I mean by work in progress. It's kind of work in progress in the same way that, Josh, I would call you a work in progress.
Fair.
You already do a wonderful job.
Well,
but you're still a work in progress.
So I'm Orlando Brown Jr. then. I feel like at least I think for anyone in Kansas City sports media, I think I'm probably the most likely to wear a foxtail as an accessory, like Orlando Brown Jr. does. So I think that checks out.
Yeah, it tracks.
I think he makes a little more money than I do, but again, work in progress. I'm probably pretty close to getting there.
I think maybe $1 or $2 more.
Yeah, I'll work on it. I'll stick in the same story here and just hop over to the right side of the line. Trey Smith, first NFL action. Not a perfectly clean sheet, but also a very good day, it appeared.
Yes, he didn't pitch quite a shutout. He ended up with a pass blocking loss and a run blocking loss, which I'm not panicking about. He just had one where he a couple times where his feet weren't as under him as they should be. It was what you'd expect from a talented rookie, learning how to deal with guys that are as strong as him.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not as strong as him, that are nearly as strong as him.
That are NFL interior defensive linemen strong.
Yes, it's just an entirely different game. And he overall, though, he did an excellent job as well. I was impressed. I was impressed with his ability to get out into space. He had to pick up a stunt, just one, but he did an awesome job passing it off. It was very encouraging seeing him get to his spots on a couple of run plays. And then there was when they did the end around to Tyreek Hill, watching him get a chance to see what he would look like trying to get into space. That's a big snap. Honestly, people should go look at that snap when they ran that jet sweep to Tyreek Hill. Watch what Lucas Niang and Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith look like going out into space. Like, they didn't really get a chance to, but it was impressive. And so with Smith, it was cool seeing everything we're seeing in practice translate. And that's kind of the theme as we talk about each guy. That was really the theme of the game. And I'm excited to see what keeps up leading into the second week of preseason.
I'm skipping ahead a little bit because of what you just said there, but it's funny because the first time I was watching the GIF loop on the Tyreek Hill little toss action to the right, Lucas Niang gets out of his set and down the field a little bit, like a step ahead of Travis Kelce. And Trey Smith does as well. Like, it is some quick, and Kelce had a little traffic in front of him. I'm not saying that they were faster than him, but like they all kind of moved as a wall there, and that makes me feel pretty good about those guys.
Absolutely, and I don't know if you saw in a couple other plays where Creed Humphrey was asked to get into space, even if they didn't quite run it all the way through, and man, he looks athletic.
Yeah, he looked very comfortable.
That entire line, outside of Brown, who we know can get vertical, but he doesn't have great change of direction. But we know he can get vertical because he did it at times with Baltimore. That entire line, though, looks crazy athletic and huge. Lucas Niang is a huge guy. And so that snap you're talking about, what impressed me wasn't just the fact that he got 3 or 4 yards down the field very quickly. If you watch that snap, and this is one that people can look at now, it's a subscriber only, so, that just is what it is.
Costs like 17 cents, just do it.
He gets out into space, and there's a secondary defender closing, trying to pursue, and he's able to put on the brakes and shadow the movement of that defender to stay in the way and force the defender to alter an angle towards down the field rather than cutting underneath him. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, and even then, Niang gets his hands on him at a different angle. Like, it's very impressive.
He does. He's able to give him a little shove, and that's the interesting thing. A great block doesn't always mean that you pancake the guy. Sometimes it means you were able to successfully get in their way, which is a lot harder than it sounds when you are a 330-pound lineman in space against one of the world's best athletes. And he did a really great job of it. And it's the difference. If you allow a defender to cut underneath you there, he can take a straight angle to the sideline. You force him to go down the field, that gives Tyreek Hill a head start, which usually ends a certain way. Tyreek Hill's was that was one block and really good pursuit by a defensive lineman from going to the house. And that was in part because the line just got downfield really quick.
Yeah.
So it was really encouraging to see that with Niang. He played well too. He did have one on a stunt that Trey Smith picked up really well. Niang didn't seem to recognize that the defender was going to go underneath, and so he did allow a pressure there. That was the only pressure any of the 5 starting linemen gave up.
And it was a relatively harmless one in the grand scheme of things. Or at least Mahomes made it that. It just sort of dumped it over him.
It just was, yeah, it was relatively harmless. And it was after a period of time, too. So I charted it as a loss, but it was one of those things, you and I have talked about this, that there's a limit to how much I'm willing to chart.
Yeah.
But it was one of those low-level losses,
right,
as opposed to a really bad one.
And I guess, I don't know, that was the Hardman, like, drop, bounce, whatever. Maybe, I don't know, maybe if Mahomes feels a little extra time, he has a chance to put the, I don't know. I'm not really stressed about it. So there's your Niang breakdown. What about let's go Creed Humphrey, and then I'll save Joe Thuney. I think it's a relatively quick evaluation for Thuney, but I think it's an interesting one. But Creed Humphrey did go out there and pitch another shutout.
He didn't have any losses. It's worth noting he didn't have any wins as a pass blocker either.
Mm-hmm.
He was never really one-on-one as a pass blocker.
Is it harder to win as a pass blocker as a center? Is that, or am I imagining that? I really don't know.
It's all scheme dependent, but being any of the interior linemen, you're more likely to be uncovered and part of a double team.
Yeah.
And I count those as neutral snaps, which really are, by and large, a neutral snap is, by and large, a positive thing for a lineman. It's just, I'm not going to give both Joe Thuney and Creed Humphrey a win for successfully double teaming one dude, because holy crap, they should do that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But one thing that I would note, and this is where it sounds like this is where you start picking nits and you find those 1 or 2% differences. He looked a lot better on his double teams in pass rushing situations with Joe Thuney and with Trey Smith than the Chiefs did last year. There was very little. One of the video clips that I showed where he showed some power and he just stonewalled the guy to where Thuney really barely had to help.
Yeah. And
the guy was just stonewalled 5 yards away from the quarterback and gave him tons of time to survey the field. It was one of the better pockets of the day. And Humphrey didn't do a ton, but he showed a ton of athleticism. He showed some good functional strength, and he had multiple run block wins where he did some really good work. And that was super encouraging to see, because I kind of figured he would be a solid pass blocker out of the gate. The run blocking, I was curious if he'd show some power, and he did. And he was really encouraging. It's going to sound like I'm drenching people in Kool-Aid with this, but they really did play that well. And again, they should.
Right, they went up against backups.
The backups.
Yep.
They should dominate them.
Last thing on Joe Thuney really quick. I thought it was an interesting note that the Chiefs, you noted this in the story, the Chiefs left him in one-on-ones a lot, and he was doing well there.
Yes, and that was something that was kind of different with him. And so if you look at the charting, if you're a lucky subscriber, he had 4 pass block wins in 11 total snaps. That's an unusually large number of one-on-one situations for a guard. Yeah. And I'm curious if it shows one of the things that they're going to try to do schematically is be able to say to their left guard, hey, we're counting on you to win these matchups one-on-one. Because the Patriots counted on him to do that. And that allows them to do certain things in terms of Smith and Humphrey helping each other out, or Humphrey being more of a rover to help out the tackles, to where the tackles can cheat to the outside a little bit, knowing that if the guy cuts inside that he might get jacked up by the center. That's where some of the best pancakes come from, are some of those help blocks. So that was just an interesting side note. Thuney looks like, as advertised, he looks the same every single snap. He's a machine.
The one-on-one thing also feels like something that could help, I don't know if fully, but help validate the cost that the Chiefs paid to bring him in. Like, if you can leave him on an island as a guard, then it should ideally make everyone else's life a little easier, or allows you to do some more creative things. And maybe you are working with a dominant offensive line, not just a not bad one. Which again, I don't know how much that remains to be seen, but it's something that I'll at least be keeping an eye on.
Absolutely. The sum of the parts idea is part of what justifies that sort of expenditure, because really the more I read, the more I look at this stuff. The reality is no individual defender or offensive player, other than quarterback, is technically by themselves worth a giant contract. And so then it's on teams to understand what the sum of the parts is going to look like and correctly piece that together. Because the answer isn't to never pay anyone, right? That's the straw man that people will throw. It's like, well, no one's worth it. Everything's meaningless. We're in Ecclesiastes. Everything's vanity.
Yeah.
But the thing is understand the sum of the parts where, okay, who can we pay that on their own look like an overpay? Because most positions are, except for quarterback. But when taken into account with how the team is built and what we're doing schematically, actually fits in the puzzle perfectly. And I think that might be what they're trying to do with Joe Tooney.
Seth, we got to get out of here. So thank you, as always, for your incredible culture and pop culture breakdowns, your biblical references, your offensive line charting, and all of that. You can get more of all of those things at the Chief in the North newsletter, mnchiefsfan.substack.com. Or you can follow him on Twitter, and you can follow him on Twitter at MNChiefsFan, real MN Chiefs Fan, because apparently at MN Chiefs Fan was taken. Thank you, Seth.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Did you know you can listen to Almost Entirely Sports anywhere, anytime? Well, you can. Just search for Almost Entirely Sports wherever you get your podcasts. This is Almost Entirely Sports with Joshua Brisco.
We have 18 minutes left, and we haven't actually talked about anything.
On Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Thank you, as always, to Seth Keysor for joining us as he does every Tuesday. And also, we got to talk about Seth with Ryan, about Ryan with Seth. Been a good show tonight. I wonder if we can follow it up with anything else. How about Jordy Nelson? That's right, the former Packers and also Raiders, but mostly Packers receiver, sat down with me a little bit this weekend out of that big sports memorabilia signing with the folks at ADA, and I got to chat with him about Aaron Rodgers, about his time in Green Bay, about his time in Oakland, if he ever really got close, as was rumored at one point, to coming back to Kansas City, and we even got a little K-State football in there with the K-State legend as well. Here's my conversation with Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson just stopped by. I like to say it as if you've just swung by my house, just to come hang out for a little bit. But regardless, thank you for coming over and giving us some time.
No problem. Good to be here.
How does it feel to be around some K-State fans ready to go back to that time of your career here in the Kansas City area?
It's good. Well, good to be able to see someone out and about. And see people in person again. Yeah. And I always say this is kind of the first big signing I've done in this region. So I've done plenty up in Wisconsin and Chicago area. But, I'm hoping to see a little bit more purple now.
I think you're going to have a pretty good chance of that if any of the walks around the area I've done have meant anything. This has been my favorite question to ask everyone so far. And obviously you haven't gotten out there yet. But what's the weirdest thing that someone has asked you to sign just at any point? You've definitely signed some cheeseheads. That's definitely the
my rookie year, we were at a park, and a kid asked me to sign his sock, and I looked down at his feet, and he only had one sock on. So that was kind of gross. And then
what happened to the other sock?
Yeah. And then obviously everyone knows the cheeseheads, but then there's also cheese bras. So
okay.
So those get kind of interesting and awkward at moments.
So I'll tell you this. So Hunter Dozier, the Royals third baseman outfielder, talked to him yesterday, and he said the weirdest thing he signed was a bowling ball. He has no particular attachment to bowling. You win, though.
Yeah.
You win. You definitely, you absolutely.
There's some interesting people out there.
Yeah, there really are. I don't know if you want to just you want to just shoo me away from this, feel free, but everything going on in Green Bay this offseason has obviously been absolutely bonkers. And I don't know if you've got any trade secrets, and if you don't want to share, that's fine. But I'm interested just how you've absorbed that, watching it from a little bit afar.
I think it was interesting just based off of, I think the media enjoyed it just because it gave you guys something to talk about every day.
You're 100% right.
Even to a point where they were calling anyone and everyone it was similar to the Sean McVay coaching hiring system.
Yes.
It's if you even walked by Aaron Rodgers, we wanted to ask you if you knew what was going to go and what your thoughts were. So I thought that was comical. So, but no, I stayed out. I talked to him back in March. I had a conversation a little bit about what was going on, but then once it all heated up, I stayed away from it. I didn't need to get involved in it. And like he said in his press conference, he called around and talked to different people and their experiences in other places and how it went when we left Green Bay and everything. So he's a very smart man. Prepared man, so he definitely did his research, and I think everyone saw that come his 30-minute press conference and explanation of how the offseason went.
He seems super interesting. You said smart, but every time that he's been able to talk in a more relaxed format, I've found him very compelling to be around. I imagine that's true to life.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people really got to see a little bit of his personality on the Pat McAfee show every Tuesday during the season. I think I just saw they're doing it again this year, so that'll be entertaining. But yeah, very diverse human being. Sit there and do crosswords puzzles all day long and answer every single one of them when I can't get one of them. Like you said, went out on Jeopardy and crushed that. Heard all sorts of comments. I haven't been able to watch it yet. But again, very prepared. I talked to him before before he did that, or maybe right after he did it, or after he taped it, and just how prepared he was, and that he got onto Trebek timing, as they called it, and had his notes and everything. So he obviously wasn't going to go in there blind. So he's a very smart human being. His recall is, something I don't think anybody has ever experienced before, what he can do and recall from 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, the practice that happened yesterday, it's all back there. He doesn't forget much.
It's super interesting. It's also something I've heard a little bit of around Pat Mahomes, which is kind of interesting that maybe that's a trait that some of those guys have in common. I'll stop asking about other people now, though, because a while back it seemed like there was a little bit of a murmur of maybe you being interested in getting a season in Kansas City, or kind of walking that line of retired, unretired, almost retired. How close did that ever come to you making a trip to Kansas City?
It wasn't that close. When I got released by Oakland, I think that's when that conversation came up, and with me and my agent, and giving him options of where we might be interested in going. And I wasn't in the mood of moving my family all around this country anymore. They'd moved out to California with me, and they'd been moving again within the same year that they moved out there. So that wasn't enticing to me, but one thing was enticing was Kansas City, obviously the program they had, and then being only 2 hours away from, like, I drove out here this morning or today, and it was an hour and 55-minute drive. So to where family can still stay back home, come up for weekends and games. It would be a little rough for 6 months, but definitely doable. So that's where the conversation went. But obviously Kansas City has a great organization and had receivers, but it was just something we threw out there to see if they'd be interested. I think there was some conversation, but nothing that really went anywhere. And so, which was fine with me. I'm happy with where I am, being retired and doing other things and enjoying life.
What's one of the things you've gotten to do post-retirement that you never got to do during your NFL career?
Watch football on Sunday and not be sore on Monday.
That's pretty good. What about from your collegiate time? I mean, we can talk about K-State a little bit. The conference realignment stuff has been very hectic, and I don't know, you've got any nerves about where K-State ends up, how the Big 12 is going to fare, what it's been like watching that from afar?
It's a little interesting. To be honest, I think I'm a little worried about how it'll go and where we'll end up and what the whole scheme of everything will be. But I don't know too much of it, just a little bit that I've heard, and obviously it's way over my head. So,
right.
I think it'll be interesting. Hopefully the dust can settle and everyone get in a spot where they all can be successful, and we can still be productive.
How closely have you been following the current actual on-field team? Anything that excites you going into this next season?
I think the main thing is Skylar Thompson coming back and being healthy. I was super disappointed for him and the program when he went down last year after beating OU and coming back and having a lead against Tech, and then struggling. Everyone else, once he went out, everyone else kind of struggled the rest of the year. And obviously, Deuce Vaughn and what he can do is incredible. It's like seeing another Darren Sproles out there. Obviously, I'm sure I'm the first one to make that comparison.
Yeah, that's the first comparison ever, yeah.
But also, I'm hoping this fall the stadium's full. We still went to the games last year, and it was super weird to see such an empty stadium, especially for as passionate K-State fans are. But hopefully everyone will get more comfortable, come back out, as we're saying, fill the bill, and create that college atmosphere that these kids deserve and want to experience. And it's one that I was able to experience for a few years, and it's a blast when it's full and rocking the way it is.
Yeah, it's an awesome environment. Great when it's filled with purple. Hopefully the hallways out here are as well. Thank you for making some time for us, Jordy. Get ready to hopefully again sign some purple and silver. Hopefully no silver and black though. That would honestly, I mean, I get it for you, I get it. But it would offend me.
It was odd, but I don't think I'll see too much of that out here.
I would think not. Thank you, man. Appreciate your time. Thanks again to Jordy Nelson for joining us. That's a conversation from earlier this weekend. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you enjoyed everything on tonight's show, from truly unhinged first segment to a great time talking with Ryan Tracy and Seth Keysor. Had a lot of fun. No show tomorrow night, but we're back for a full 3 hours on Thursday. We're going to bring you Tamba Hali, Derek Nottie, Scott Barlow, Brady Singer, Nikki Lopez, Hunter Dozier, and David Lesky. The stars are all coming out on Thursdays, Almost Entirely Sports. We'll talk to you then. Bye, Mom!
You were listening